Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry, high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher X video. All right, everyone that's watching this has seen Oversimplified. In fact, it might be the reason you found my channel in the first place. And I've covered everything they've put out. As a teacher, I even use some of their videos in my classroom. Now, this video was recommended to me by multiple people over my Discord server who wanted to see my thoughts on it. So this is from a channel called Lavader. Sorry if I said that wrong. And it's called Oversimplified and the Harms of Oversimplifying History. So a lot of thoughts went through my head as I first saw this. And I thought of a lot of different outcomes and different ways that this video might present itself. Is it going to be one of those videos that basically you just see the arguments and comment sections like, you missed this thing and left out this thing and this thing? Which is such a lame thing because no video is going to cover everything, and it likely may not cover it using words and descriptions that you would want it to. But I'm very intrigued by this. Original video link is down below. Please support that. I'm sure I'm going to ask you guys a ton of questions, so be ready to reply in the comments. Let's get started. I'm assuming this also is not necessarily like a clickbaity type title in video because it was actually, again, recommended by multiple people that actually wanted to see like my reaction to it. So I'm assuming they've seen it and maybe it makes some takes and stuff that I can put in. But yeah, we'll see what we got here.
History YouTube. It is truly a magical place. Hundreds of creators, all sharing the same passion and love for the field.
It's done more for history recognition than anything ever has. More than a school could because of the way it is presented in a fun, entertaining, low pressure way, you know, that we don't have in school. We can't really replicate in just a regular classroom.
Hundreds of thousands of videos of people explaining and telling new stories about events and characters. Pair that up with magnificent and detailed editing styles and even some art to go alongside it, and you will have people hooked and interested for many hours to come, regardless of how boring or niche topic you are talking about is. I am very sure that plenty of you recognize some of the big players on the platform. Simple History with their elegant animations and iconic voice. History Matters with its cute art style and method of explaining certain topics and questions in a very quick and elegant way. The Armchair Historian and his absolutely stunning animations and way of presentation.
His team's amazing.
And who could forget Kings and Generals? The way he focuses on
a channel I should probably cover more. I've been recommended, you know, Kings and Generals so much, and I've watched some stuff on my own. It was one of those channels though where I felt like I couldn't add anything. It would be pure reaction and no commentary. But I'm not against it. Not against it. Let me know if you want me to see more.
Certain battles and wars in absolute stunning detail down to the smallest unit. Overall, all of these creators bring something unique and exciting to the table.
In the comments right now, people are listing all their other channels. Why didn't you add this thing?
And thanks to them, many people got more interested in this field as well.
For sure.
But there is one man and creator all of us know about. The man who is the absolute undisputed king of history YouTube. Completely crushing his competition in every way possible.
I agree.
I am of course talking about the one and only Oversimplified.
Yep.
This man is an icon for a very good reason. He pretty much checks all the boxes. A beautiful and fun art style?
Yep.
Check.
Unique and identifiable.
Iconic voice? Check.
Sure.
Extremely entertaining way of presentation?
Sure.
Check.
It's funny.
Iconic jokes and sense of humor? Check.
It's great. The writing is brilliant. It has all the things that are great when you talk about series. It has liners that you use in multiple videos that people can like form community around. You can meme it, right? If something can be memed easily, it immediately puts in the forefront of mainstream culture.
Check and check. He and his content are perfect in almost every way when it comes to presenting and explaining history to people, no matter whether young or older. Sure. I have been a fan of his since pretty much primary school when he released his World War I videos.
Guys, this is just to like tell you again how good he is. I actually have run-of-the-mill history students in my classes that enjoy it, and that's hard to do in a classroom setting of a class of people that are forced to take it, right? Because it's, world history credit needed to graduate. I'm talking about my regular history classes. These absolutely kill in my AP classes because those people at least have some kind of interest in history mostly. But like a regular run of the mill kid that is just not into this as much, they're into other teenage things. Like it actually goes over pretty well. And that's one of the only channels that will ever do that in a way that is still academic enough to, hit curricular subjects.
In fact, and here is some fun Lavader trivia for you.
B-roll.
In 9th grade history class,
Those are
I was
ninth graders.
tasked with making a PowerPoint presentation about the big three of the Axis powers, Hitler, Mussolini, and Hirohito. And on the day of the presentation, when I got to Hitler, I instead played Oversimplified's Hitler documentary to the class with automatic subtitles on. Well, everyone was far too
Where's he
busy
from,
with
by the way,
studying
this guy?
for the physics exam later that day, so for the entire presentation, I was pretty much talking to a brick wall.
Well, I would say this too. Those are early videos. The thing about Oversimplified is their style improved a ton. So it's him, his brother, improved a lot over time. That was good. Like the original stuff was good, but the later stuff gets better. And you can see that, I feel like.
But you get the point. Oversimplified has been very influential on the field of internet history. Since his first videos, he has only been improving in every field, and he will continue to do so. He has also sparked numerous channels inspired by his style, and even an entire Turkish channel. You know you are doing something right when the Turks start copying your homework, and that you are responsible for a Turkish family having a normal life in the hellish landscape that is modern Turkey.
The other person that's done this is Salmonella. And the big thing about that, both of these guys leave a space for, I don't want to call them copycats, just people that are inspired. They're just inspired by it, and they have their own little takes. So because Oversimplified and Salmonella are rather infrequent in the way that they upload, the time that they upload, that a lot of people can kind of put themselves into those spaces. If these guys had a lot more content, you wouldn't see as many probably groups going, with that, like following that style, because it'd be more like competing rather than filling empty spaces that there is in content.
But as I started making my own content on here and breaking my young Zoomer mind free from early 2010s internet brain rot by actually touching a book, I started noticing a few things about Oversimplified and his content. And the more pages...
I can tell you this. Okay, so you finally get to the point where you become like an academic, right? These videos are not for you. They were never for those people. They were never for you, okay? That was not. This Oversimplified may be the only real history-related channel that is mainstream, is broken to mainstream. A lot of people that this is the only history content they consume. This is not for those people.
I read and the more research I did, the more I started realizing his videos are not that good. So here I am today,
it's different framing.
A little guy with 30,000 subscribers
of it.
Going up against an absolute titan. Honestly, now that I think about it, I am actually kind of surprised no one really did a response against him.
Well, here's the thing though, like he's there's a lot of people that feel this way. They go in there in the comment sections. They're not making video responses to it. They're in comment sections and they move on,
Except for the Marxoids, but to be fair, they bark at any moving thing that has gone 10 seconds without deep-throating Stalin. So let's get into it and see how Oversimplified's content is not only mid at best, but potentially even dangerous and misleading.
Okay, that's what I want.
Ironically, the problem at hand with Oversimplified is in the name itself.
Football war.
Oversimplified.
It has to be.
Gives you already from the get-go what you need to know about his channel and his content. He oversimplifies history, giving a very basic story time-like telling of historical events and characters, with the art style we all know and love. Now, presenting history in this entertaining and fun way is not the problem. If anything today, we definitely could use more of it, but it's the specific way these oversimplified events and characters are presented that really bothers me.
Good. I'm glad he's taking a more fair take, wasn't just the fact that it's oversimplified, but it looks like he's actually going to talk about the content. That's good. That makes it a little bit more honest, I guess, in more good faith, I guess you would say, of an argument here.
When it comes to simplifying a certain topic, as with really anything else, there is both a good and bad way of executing that.
Okay.
Standard simplification and oversimplification. We will focus on standard simplification first. Let's imagine you pick up a dense philosophy book like Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Now, I'll give you a quote from Kant and let's see if it's easy to understand.
It won't
is
be.
humiliating for human reason that it accomplishes nothing in its pure use and even requires a discipline to check its extravagances and avoid the deceptions that come from them. But on the other side, that reason can and must exercise this discipline itself without allowing anything else to censor it, elevates it, and
Most
gives
are bored
it
right
confidence
now.
in itself for the boundaries that it is required to set for its speculative use at the same time, limit the sophistical pretensions of every opponent, and thus it can secure against all attacks everything that may still be left to it from its previously exaggerated demands. How much of that made sense at first glance?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
Probably not much for the average reader, and that's completely normal. So let's try to simplify it. It's frustrating that pure human reason doesn't really achieve anything on its own and even needs to be controlled to stop it from going too far and leading us astray. But the good thing is, reason can control itself without letting anything else tell it what to do. This gives it a sense of confidence because, by setting limits on itself, it also stops others from making false claims. So, even though reason can't give us all the answers, it at least protects us from falling into errors.
Okay.
Now, this simplified version gets the point across much better, right? But notice something. Though the language is easier to follow, the essence of what Kant is saying is still there. This is the difference between simplification that helps understanding and oversimplification.
Hope he knows too with oversimplified. It wasn't like the goal. It's a good name. It's just a good name. Oversimplify is better than just simplifying.
In education, good simplification focuses on why something works or what led to a conclusion.
Dude, I want a class of 5 students, 6 students or whatever. There might be another one on the left there. What fake reality is this education?
It takes people through the reasoning without losing the details. It's not about dumbing things down or skipping to the end, but about leading people step by step. In history, it's pretty common for people to call certain figures geniuses or dumb for something they did. While you could argue that the action may not have been very bright, it oversimplifies complex motives, decisions, and events.
It puts it into words that, colloquial words, that are easy to understand, easier to convey, but they do lack nuance.
Was there something that happened that made them take that action? Was it really because they were messed up or wise in the head, or were there certain factors into play that they could not control? Let's imagine a general during an important battle who orders his troops to charge straight into enemy lines, even though it looks like a complete suicide mission. To most observers, it might seem like a reckless and dumb decision. In fact, future historians might label this general as incompetent, claiming that he had led his men to certain defeat without any strategic thought.
Well, that's where the context is important, that you're not just using post hoc analysis of events in history, but understanding what the decision was like at that time and with what evidence that was available at that time. Same reason why you can't just like beat down on ancient ancient scientists, because they didn't have the access to the material that of course you have now.
But let's think for a moment. Why did he make that choice?
Right.
There could be evidence to suggest that the general had received faulty intelligence earlier that day, convincing him that the enemy forces were much weaker than they actually were. On top of that, perhaps a crucial supply line had been cut off, leaving his troops short on resources. Right. With no ability to sustain a prolonged battle, he thought that a decisive strike might be the only chance to turn the tide before his army starved or surrendered.
Is that a good point so
far?
Now,
does this make his decision any smarter? Not necessarily, but it shows that it wasn't a simple case of poor judgment or idiocy. Multiple factors, bad intelligence, resource shortages, and so forth, shaped his choice, even if the outcome was disastrous. So when we call him a dumb, incompetent general, we miss out on all the other elements that played into this decision. A meaningful simplification would explore why each side took the actions they did, how historical context shaped their decisions, and what the consequences were. To put it bluntly,
Another dream classroom.
Truly effective explanation makes sure people grasp the reasoning behind the facts, not just the conclusion. What? It respects the complexity of the subject.
Is it a note or is he just annoying her? Now I'm distracted. Now I want to know what's going on here. This guy just threw it at the girl.
While making it accessible to everyone. To truly understand history or philosophy or really any subject, we need more than just a conclusion. We need to see the path
now this guy's
that
asking
leads
the other
us there.
to cheat.
And then we have the other side, oversimplification.
Okay.
This one, which is unfortunately still pretty prevalent, simplifies things for the sake of simplifying. It throws all nuance out the window in favor of a standard black and white, good versus evil, dumb versus smart approach.
All simplification is going to do that to some extent.
Its main focus is on the conclusion rather than the why of the topic or the event. And when the why and reasons are brought up, they are quickly skimmed through, which doesn't provide enough context to get the full picture. The issue with this approach is that while yes, you have effectively watered down a topic to such a level that anyone can understand it, but by doing so you sacrifice any nuance and depth. And this could lead to misinterpretations or outright lies which will shape people's opinion of that field.
Those are different things though. Lacking nuance and lying are very different things. And obviously, lying is way worse than just lacking nuance. Those are also different goals of studying history. Some is just fact-based and some is analyzing it more, almost more like a scientist, like prescribing things rather than just describing things.
Oversimplified is very guilty of this, and I am pretty sure a lot of you probably could count a few examples you noticed from the top of your head.
What's been harmfully
I noticed
taught?
These things in a series about the Russian and French Revolution. So I picked one example from his Russian Revolution video and one from the French Revolution.
These are two things that they've covered though that usually gets a lot of the people that jump in and say, you missed this, because these are topics that are very deep and a lot of people are very passionate about. So you're going to have that more likely in something like this.
Just to make you realize what is at play here. I could go over more, and trust me, there are plenty, but then this video would be hours long and I have a few more things to talk about.
Is he oversimplifying the oversimplified?
In 1917, during the tenure of the Provisional Russian government, Alexander Kerensky, in an effort to save the army, promoted General Lavader Kornilov as chief of staff. Kornilov accepted on the condition that his army reforms would go through and that Kerensky, nor the government, would intervene in them. Now, Kerensky and Kornilov were not too fond of each other personally, but they both put aside their differences and Kornilov swore his allegiance to the new Russia. Historian Sean McMeekin would write about this in his book on the Russian Revolution. Only after he reassured Kornilov that Kerensky had approved his army reform plan, Savinkov claimed in an interview conducted just days later, did Kornilov calm down. Nonetheless, he noted that, in parting, Kornilov, quote, bade me convey to Kerensky the expression of his satisfaction and the assurance of his perfect loyalty to the government. And then one man burst in and completely destroyed everything. Vladimir Nikolaevich Lvov. Lvov was just about to be fired from his position by Kerensky,
see if he gets to his
so
point
he
here.
wanted to give one last middle finger to his former boss. And oh boy, did he give a hell of a middle finger. Lvov traveled to Kornilov's residence and informed him that Kerensky thought of 3 options to fight the Bolshevik threat. The 3 options were Kerensky as dictator, some weird oligarchy, and option 3, Kornilov establishing a military dictatorship. And he, since he thought that his approach would be best, naturally said that he preferred option 3 as long as Kerensky was still involved in the government. Lvov thanked him for his choice and left for Petrograd to have an audience with Kerensky. And I think you can see where this is going.
Корнилов пытается вас свергнуть, он движется на Петроград.
Kerensky, being the paranoid guy that he was, immediately took Lvov at his word, and instead of actually trying to confirm what he heard with Kornilov himself, he immediately declared martial law in Petrograd and ordered Kornilov to be arrested for plotting to overthrow the
adding
government.
more detail to the history and more nuance, potentially.
After hearing this, gathered his men and started marching towards Petrograd. But here is the funny part. Not to overthrow Kerensky and the provisional government, but rather he believed that the Bolsheviks took over the government and were forcing Kerensky to give out these orders. So he marched...
What I'm hoping this video isn't just going to be for the next 20 minutes or whatever, or less than that, is just things that Oversimplified missed, and they're things that are important to me.
Towards Petrograd to end the Bolsheviks and save Kerensky. To say this whole thing was a misunderstanding would be the understatement of the century. McMeekin would write on this, believing that a right-wing military coup was imminent, Kerensky called an emergency cabinet meeting at midnight. Savinkov, to his immense credit, tried to talk him down, viewing the whole Kornilov business as a fatal misunderstanding, not a conspiracy. But Kerensky was having none of it. He proclaimed melodramatically, "I will not let them have the revolution." In a curious mirror imaging of what he claimed Kornilov was doing, Kerensky asked for, and was granted, dictatorial powers.
Okay.
The Kornilov affair, born in misunderstanding, was now poisoned by bad faith. After reading Kornilov's reply, Kerensky must have realized the mistake both men had made in trusting Lvov. Instead, he doubled down, accusing Kornilov in a follow-up communique of treachery. And then we know what happened afterwards. Kerensky broke the Bolsheviks out of prison to help him in stopping Kornilov. They did, and he was put behind bars. A fatal misunderstanding and miscommunication that would eventually lead to the Bolsheviks taking over. So let's see how Oversimplified
There's a lot of
Kornilov affair.
Did he just pin it all down to this one thing, though?
Hey man,
that's the opposite of nuance.
That was real swell of you. Of course, with you by my side, who would dare try to overthrow me? How about me? I did not see this coming. Unfortunately for Kerensky, Kornilov hated the liberal and socialist reforms of the new government, particularly the dumb socialist soldiers' committees. The army was no place for undisciplined left-wing snowflakes. Fearing a Bolshevik takeover was imminent, Kornilov ordered his men towards Petrograd to oust the Soviet and take over.
Yeah. Are you starting to understand what I am getting at here? Actually, I will let Oversimplified take it off with the French Revolution part.
Respect for the monarchy was at an all-time low, as France's finances were spiraling out of control, and the king and his aides really only had one solution to the crisis. Tax the poor. Tax the poor. We could do a sexy calendar shoot. Tax the poor.
Well, that's what ends up being rallied upon. Of course, there's more nuance to it, but this ends up being the thing that like the boils over the pot. Like this is that point.
And so it was. The poor, who were already struggling to make ends meet, found themselves being taxed
extremely influential.
Every direction. And that's not all. A huge portion of the peasants' harvest had to be given up. And there was also the labor tax, where peasants were required to work a certain number of days for their local lord without pay.
So, first of all, no. Louis XVI did not tax the peasants harder. In fact, one of his first measures to combat the financial crisis France was facing, together with the Controller General of Finances, Charles Alexandre de Calonne, was major tax reforms, which would, among other things, get the clergy and nobility to pay more taxes to evenly distribute the burdens, and lower, eventually replacing the salt tax and other outdated taxes.
Which doesn't work in the Ancien regime because those two estates don't pay taxes. The burden, the tax is on the third estate, which is a faulty way to do your taxation.
Ease the peasants' burden. Historian John Hartman.
This is why in proposing this that people from the first two estates are going to ally themselves with the third estate. So it becomes everyone against the, well, not everyone, but you know what I mean? Multiple facets of people against the monarchy.
Book about Louis would write about how enthusiastic the king was to go through with them. Again, Calonne stressed the need for the king's sacred word. For his part, Cologne assured his king that he would sacrifice himself without hesitation to secure success, and if the price of that success were his downfall, then he would think it one worth paying. We know that the king kept his word. Never before or since did he identify so wholeheartedly with the policies of a minister. Whether the Bourbon monarchy had the strength of the Archimedean lever would soon be known. Cologne did not exaggerate when he told the notables that the king had made the measures entirely his own through the close attention he has paid to every single one of them before adopting it. But these reforms...
Oh, there's so many other things that are factoring into this, like the inflation going on, the famine of the 1780s that was going down with bread. People were literally starving. You add all of these together. Right now, so far, it does feel like he's doing the thing from before, which is he's missing he's missing things. Therefore, I'm going to insert this.
Rejected by the Paris Parliament due to the fact that they would lose their tax privileges, and told the king that the only way to change permanent tax laws was through the Estates General, which turned into one of the main reasons why the estates were summoned. So no, Louis's only option wasn't to tax the poor, but quite the opposite. Also, about that labor tax thing, it was abolished under Louis's reign. Yeah, it ceased to exist around 20 years before the revolution, but Oversimplified makes absolutely no mention of that. I mean, some of the stuff I know...
that is a fair thing to say. This buildup was also not overnight. This is something, these are grievances that people had for a long time, generations, in fact. Okay, and these kind of things being possible, especially when the crisis was happening in 1789, were all things on the table that people were very well aware of.
In his Russian Revolution video, just straight up borders on historical revisionism and lies. Okay. The best example of this were the protests that took place in Petrograd that kicked off the February Revolution, where 300,000 people marched in the streets. Now, the exact motivations of the protesters are kinda hard to pin down, but the one thing was for certain, they were very pro-war. They believed that a German conspiracy was underway in Petrograd with the aid of Rasputin that would see Russia pulling out of the war, a conspiracy utilized by the Russian liberals during the revolution. McMeekin would write how when some people tried to call for pacifism and anti-war sentiment, the crowds quickly tore it all down. We can only surmise what the real motivations of the protesters may have been. Most eyewitness accounts agree that anti-war sentiments were not, at this stage, prominent. The basic line taken all winter by liberal critics from Milyukov to Guchkov was, after all, that the regime was honeycombed by defeatists and pro-German traitors. This was a far cry from pacifism. According to the social revolutionary veteran of the 1905 revolution, Vladimir Zenzinov, the raising of a "Down with the War" placard in Znamenskaya Square on Saturday afternoon evoked protests from the crowd, and it was withdrawn immediately.
Well, it's because it was not the initial grievance that was happening here. Revolutions before this, Bolsheviks and look at like Vladimir Lenin's family have been trying things way before this war happened. It's not built upon the war effort. It's the final nail in the coffin.
And at the forefront of the protest was Alexandra, the wife of Nicholas II.
Sure.
Utilizing the fact that she was of German descent, the protesters pretty much argued for her death and that she was quote-unquote influencing Nicholas to end the war and pull Russia out. Again, McMeekin would write, the political
which came from propaganda.
Mood of the time was captured by a more commonly seen placard reading, "Down with the German woman."
Well, because of the context, they're fighting the Germans.
Basically, the demonstrators in Petrograd supported the war and called for an end of the supposed pro-German shadow government, and naturally the Russian liberals utilized this sentiment to secure their position and overthrow the Tsar during the February Revolution. Now, watch how Oversimplified presented this.
On International Women's Day, 1917, thousands of hungry women in Petrograd were so sick of being hungry that they took to the streets. And it turns out it's not just women who experience hunger, but men too. So the next day they joined in as well. Gatherings on the streets were forbidden, but I'm not sure how you'd arrest 250,000 people. The crowds demanded an end to the war, an end to food rationing, and even an end to the Tsar's
Yeah, when people are going off to fight in the war or join the revolution, there's nobody doing farming. They're starving to death. It's what was going on in France in the French Revolution.
Hypocrisy.
This is just straight up historical revisionism at this point. Like, I know that a lot of the mainstream things we know about the Russian Revolution come from the Soviet Union, but come on, it dissolved a long time ago and historians now know a lot more objectively what took place in those years. Again, I could sit here for hours going over every single thing he got wrong in these videos. And this is just about the topics and events I have a lot of knowledge on and read books about. Who knows what other things he got completely and blatantly wrong in all the other ones. Now, I am not gonna claim anything we don't have concrete knowledge on, but I am starting to wonder where Oversimplified gets all his information from. What are his sources? Again, these are just speculations because we don't know where he gets his research from, but I have this gut feeling that he, at most, does mid-level internet research on these subjects through Wikipedia pages, other YouTube videos, and the numerous other articles on the internet. Despite him being oversimplified in every sense of the word, we do see that he does actually put quite a bit of effort into research since he talks about many things similar to a Wikipedia page. But would it really be that difficult to read a proper book on the topic written by a historian so you can get all the context and nuance of the topic you are talking about? I mean, McMeekin's book, one of the best in regards to the Russian Revolution, appears as one of the first if you Google Russian Revolution book. The Kornilov affair would have been excellent material for his...
Sure. Oversimplified probably uses a secondary source that does a lot of what he wants, what this video essayist wants him to do, that. And this guy here is using that one book where there's going to be multiple sources used for something like Oversimplified, because you're using a secondary source that used primary sources and skipping. Well, I shouldn't say that, because what I mean by that, by primary sources, is just one of many sources in this case. So with that, he keeps sense of this Meekin book, right? But how many of the other ones would he have used as well to criticize, I guess, what Oversimplified is doing? But it's right. There's not a lot of source information coming from Oversimplified, and are people going to go and look at those sources? There's definitely no hurt in adding your sources, that's for sure. It will, and it might appease people like this that are criticizing it.
Style and way of presentation, and I do believe he would have absolutely loved it if he came across the full context of what happened and included it in his video. And he would have if he just, again,
it's not possible
picked up a book. So why am I exactly complaining about all of this? I mean, I literally go watch a channel called Oversimplified and then act shocked when the videos are oversimplified. Yes. And that is exactly why I am criticizing him. It's not just about some random YouTuber who talks about history to some audience. No, there is a bigger picture here for us. Something we have been seeing as the internet and YouTube started getting more and more widespread and taken seriously. Let me ask you this. When we click on an oversimplified video, what is the primary reason and incentive for watching his content?
To learn about something in an entertaining way.
Is it learning about history? Sure, that may be a factor, but if that was the primary one, you would be picking up books about the Punic Wars from your local bookshop. No. The primary reason any of us watch his videos is entertainment.
It's both.
The animation, jokes, and his overall way of presentation is what we are truly here for.
It is probably more about entertainment than a lot of them. Now, one thing Oversimplified has done as well is mixed in major topics that a lot of people know about, but then lesser known ones like the Pig War. Very few people of their audience is going to have any idea what that was. And going into that, they're not like, people weren't going in going, oh, I'm watching this because the Pig War, but because, no, it's Oversimplified.
Everything else, including the information, comes second. I mean, Oversimplified could literally make a video about photosynthesis and it could still rack up tens of millions of views. So what is the issue here? You see, when a video focuses more on the entertainment aspect, it tends to put viewers into a state of ease and relaxation, a mental state that makes it much easier for them to accept information without questioning it. Psychologically, this effect is known as the elaboration likelihood model, which suggests that when people are relaxed or entertained, they are more likely to process information through the peripheral route rather than the central route. The peripheral route relies on superficial cues such as humorous animation or charismatic presentation, rather than a critical evaluation of the content itself. Essentially, if something is entertaining or enjoyable, people often accept the accompanying message without much scrutiny, because their defenses are down. This is particularly effective because humans are emotional beings by nature. Our brains have evolved to prioritize emotion over rationality. Emotional appeals activate the limbic system, the part of the brain involved in our emotional and behavioral responses. When a video, like those by Oversimplified, delivers information with humor, vibrant colors, and engaging storytelling, it directly taps into our emotions, making us more receptive. This emotional engagement creates a feeling of trust and familiarity, often completely bypassing our rational skepticism.
That's fair. That's fair. What he's saying there. The effect that has in bringing a trustworthy relationship. All of us want to be able to make conclusions in the most straight line way possible. And if it can get us from A to B very quickly, we love that. We are geared to that. We don't love complication.
Contrast, rational analysis requires effort and a state of alertness, which is pretty difficult to maintain when we're being entertained. This is why viewers may end up accepting oversimplified or even inaccurate portrayals of complex historical events, because their emotional brain is in control, not the critical rational side. As a wise man once said, there is no such thing as an unconvincing argument, only a lack of editing skills. We political YouTubers do not have this luxury. When people look at my videos, they don't enter it for the sake of entertainment. Well, at least not primarily. They enter with the expectations of being informed or to see what my arguments are, so they can...
Man, that might be the most narcissistic take he's had.
Either respond to them or accept them. Basically, the brain is more of in a state of alertness and pays more attention carefully to the topic being talked about.
But to actually say that is kind of wild.
Our videos, therefore, when being watched, primarily go down the central route of information processing, with all the critical thinking attached to it. Now, is this something inherently bad? Should this way of presentation be abandoned? No, not really. In fact, I would even go as far as to promote it. The biggest perk of this way of presenting a topic is the fact, as I have mentioned, that people genuinely learn more from it rather than a bland giant history textbook that will make anyone bored out of their mind. The reason why the status quo of teaching history in primary school and high school has largely remained is because it really was the best way for history to be taught to children who largely do not have such a big interest in it. Dumbing down topics and fields in black and white ways is much more easily digestible than teaching all the nuance about that topic. That is something actual historians need to concern themselves with. But with digitalization coming around and us creators now being taken more seriously, we have an actual and real chance of breaking the status quo. This way, history is being taught through this black and white great man theory-esque way. We can now utilize our creativity, our storytelling, our humor, and our research to not only make children and teens interested, but for them to actually learn and understand, something that actually honors their capabilities of understanding a nuanced topic, even at such an early age, rather than diminishing it. Teachers and professors across schools are now utilizing content creators more and more to teach history because they recognize that this way, students will actually learn and retain all the information much more easily and efficiently. And I have absolutely no doubt that Oversimplified's videos have been shown hundreds if not thousands of times across classrooms.
I have.
Hell, again, I literally did that when I was in 9th grade. Ironically, this also goes for me. Over a year ago,
I can tell this guy's younger now, probably in the early years of studying history at the level that all of us history teachers that communicate this stuff do. It's like he thinks there's some kind of disconnection of that we don't all go through exactly what he did, and we don't understand this stuff. I can tell this guy is not taught in in a scenario of mainstream audiences in a setting that you have youth, like 15-year-olds, required to be there, and how to communicate that. The thing, he's totally right about, yes, it would be better if we could do things this other way. It's not realistic, and it's actually not even as beneficial as he thinks. I think he thinks it is. This sounds a lot like somebody who researched something and found out about something, and as quickly as possible wanted to present it in a way that was kind of debatable, that could be used as debatable.
By an American high school history teacher regarding my video on Kaiser Wilhelm II, and he asked me for some additional resources I utilized because he wanted to use it in his class material to give a more nuanced and neutral viewpoint of World War I, presenting the views and actions of all sides, rather than the usual Entente Germany bad way. To think the videos I made have actually had a real-life impact on a high school history class is something I am truly proud and happy about. That is the point I am trying to make. We content creators don't just make stuff anymore for anonymous internet users who spend 8 hours a day watching videos.
Mostly you do.
But now also something that is impacting the general public. And no doubt with continued digitalization, content creators may be utilized more to actually teach students. What I am saying is, we now also have a responsibility. Kids, teens, and really anyone deserve a richer, more nuanced understanding of history, one that acknowledges complexities and fosters critical thinking. We need to move away from the outdated methods that present history in oversimplified narratives of heroes and villains, and instead inspire genuine curiosity about the forces that shape human events.
That's the first step towards getting an interest in curiosity. He doesn't understand the ladder that happens with this. This is the stuff that you start with. This is the stuff that gets you interested in a topic. It is not the final product, nor is anything any content creator is making that is of any type of popularity on YouTube.
Let's remember, history isn't just a collection of dates and names, it's the story of humanity in all its messiness. If we want the next generation to learn from the past, we need to present it to them authentically, respecting their ability to understand and grow from its lessons. And that is why, from my point of view, it's really disappointing that Oversimplified doesn't realize that oversimplification is actually the main problem here.
No,
in a way, he is actually upholding the status quo of how we are taught.
It's the exact opposite of the status quo, what Oversimplified is actually doing with this. The status quo is not involving this level of communication.
Successful way with his way of presentation. If he actually did a little more research about the nuances of the topics and individuals he is talking about,
that's fair.
It would be a massive.
Although he's just inserting every single one of his, again, I haven't seen his content. He's going to have the same people saying the same exact things that he's saying about Oversimplified that he's going to have of his content, or anybody and of any content creator is going to have. His experience is going to be no different than with Oversimplified.
Massive improvement. He is the king of history YouTube. And that is why I exactly believe he should perhaps rethink his whole approach. Now, does this mean you should completely stop watching him and not take anything he says seriously? No, of course not. There is still some merit to it, but just keep in mind that he is...
I don't think he knows what the merit is yet.
Oversimplified.
He hasn't articulated that.
In the end, and if anything, take what you hear from him with a massive grain of salt and be under the impression that perhaps there is something more at play here. In fact, since I already mentioned I could sit for hours here going over his videos,
sure, but doesn't matter.
If this video gets at least 5,000 likes, I will do an entire breakdown of his Russian Revolution video, no matter for how many hours I'm gonna have to sit down and talk. So
this is exactly why it's important, that you peer review stuff, right? Look at the amazing job that like Vlogging Through History does. He does, especially depending on the topic, at such a better level than I do in some of these scenarios on certain topics, because he's so good at responding to those sort of things, the stuff that's really in his wheelhouse. And then, I have the things that I know about as well, and why it is important for all of this to start happening, which is to review those things.
So that is all for today, and I will see you all next time.
All right, final thoughts. All right, I think this guy's heart is in the right place. I do think he has a better understanding of how education works. Probably coming from more of an early academic part of his career. It's ignoring a lot of the facts about education and even about history. About how that works. I don't know if he understands the core audience exactly of how this is supposed to go, or understand that history is something that is open to interpretation, because he's like saying you have to have all of whatever facts in here. And yeah, that would be fantastic. But history is complete. So much of it is based off of interpretation. And this is a good video essay here at, I think, being able to point out the importance of nuance and, taking something like Oversimplified, but of course going further. And he never doesn't really, I don't think, say that much, which is exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and how everybody that understands the effect of Oversimplified has there. But this is a very common thing I'm seeing, kind of the way he talks about something like Oversimplified, as you see with people that are on a deeper level of studying history, and especially when they're early into it, like an early college student or somebody still in that field of academia and void of kind of the real world, about how things are communicated, how society works, and how mainstream education, public education works. It's missing. It is missing that perspective of an educator in the sense that that you have to deal with all of the difficult things that come with education and it being your career and the demographic that you have to teach to. I do think this kind of take here is par for the course with that. It's essentially not really any different than what you'll see in the comment section of any historical video about the same people, pretty much in the same vein saying, you missed this thing. And that's essentially what this ended up coming down to. I was thinking it was going to be maybe a little bit different than that, but it was simply, you missed this thing, therefore it's bad and it's going to be truly harmful. And that's not the case, especially as people get older and more invested into these topics, that they're going to go deeper and find more nuance here. But it's a perspective. It's a very, I think, youthful, naive perspective, what's taking place here, and could possibly change with time. But it's nothing new or a different take, or in the end going to probably lead to much change, or even change of any usefulness, I guess I would say. All right. Anyways, I would love to sit down and think about this a little bit more. I'm responding just from immediately watching this. But I would be interested, again, to see, again, if he's going to actually do what he was saying, which is respond to some of these things. And I want it to not just be, hey, you missed these things, and they are important to me, therefore they are important to the interpretation of the whole thing. And it's going to be some earth-shattering difference and indeed harmful. And we'll see if that is, and what harm is coming out of this. Just the way you teach anything political, anything that's open to interpretation could all be deemed as harmful if it's not taught in a certain way. And the focus, I do agree with him, should be about talking about how there's multiple perspectives of things. But for him to expect that you're going to have all the same interpretations that he probably shares, or whatever within his reach of what he has accessed informationally is going to be in something like an Oversimplified, which is not the goal, or even the usefulness of something like an Oversimplified, and not allow the space to be diverse in the way that history is communicated. I think it's noble, but it's also narcissistic. So with that, thank you all again for watching. If you've heard me ramble here for this long, thank you for being here. We'll see y'all next time.